Hello viewers, I am gonna present the training program for the Powershell for SharePoint 2010, and hopefully all the people who are working on SharePoint 2007, that is MOS 2007, or SharePoint 2010, or maybe at nowadays SharePoint 2013 online, they all have been using the commands, PowerShell commands, or STS ADM in 2000, March 2007. They must be looking forward for such a course which would help them to understand all the PowerShell commands for SharePoint 2010. So this course material is basically for all those viewers who have been administering the SharePoint Server 2010, the farm admins, the web application admins, or what you call as like managing the site collections. So there have been a lot of UI interface being talked about by these people. They have been doing various tasks from the central administration of SharePoint Server 2010, but all these tasks are very useful and very handy if we come to PowerShell for SharePoint 2010. So I would be covering mostly all of the things in this course material which would suffice your needs of understanding of how the PowerShell for SharePoint 2010 works and how to get used to it and use it in the most efficient manner. So I would take care of starting from your basic understanding to a more mature level of implementing these commands on a day-to-day basis of administering the PowerShell for SharePoint 2010. So this course material would eventually cover a lot of stuff for you, and hopefully it would be very useful. So let's get started to it. So this is my table of contents. You might see a lot of stuff in table of contents itself, but don't get worried. I will be taking care of each of these points which I have mentioned in the table of contents, and it will let you know how useful this course can be. So the first thing which I would be talking about would be origin of PowerShell. That is all the history which is involved with the PowerShell. So definitely anything which we speak about in terms of anything, like if we are gonna talk about any country, we are definitely gonna talk about its origin and the history involved in its origin. So that will give you an idea of how the PowerShell is so much powerful in this era of working with SharePoint 2010. The things next would be what is Windows PowerShell. Definitely when you know the origin, you would like to know what it actually is. Also covering the introduction part of it, the common uses. The common uses are like on a day-to-day basis as how PowerShell can be very useful, and what are the various areas or the focus areas you can talk about where these PowerShell commands would be so much useful, and why is this something which is talked about a lot, and it's that training programs, they have been asked a number of times from me to deliver a training program on PowerShell. Okay, so you will also like to know software requirements, the Windows PowerShell ISA, 4 reasons which I consider are very important to learn Windows PowerShell, the PowerShell basics, the building blocks of how the PowerShell is built upon. Just like considering a building, so it has got some pillars which lay the foundation of its top floors. So that's how the PowerShell. I'll talk about all the building blocks for this PowerShell. The get command, get member, get help, get alias, select object, and the pipe. This would be some mysterious thing which you would definitely be using a lot in the PowerShell area. So the more there, you'd be seeing more number of things like arrays, associate arrays, the loops, the for each statement, while statement, the permissions for PowerShell. What all permissions do you need for this PowerShell? What about STS ADM? That is a SharePoint server administration tool which came with MOS 2007. That is the Microsoft Office SharePoint Server 2007. So this was the tool which was being used at the time the SharePoint was just evolving after WSS 3.0. So the 7 tips of how you would be using beneficially the PowerShell tool. I would like to also talk about the its advantages over STS ADM. So this STS ADM is still being used, and it has got like almost all the functionalities like PowerShell, but you would definitely be looking forward to know why PowerShell is eradicating STS ADM. So this would give you an idea of how and why the PowerShell is more advantageous over STS ADM. Getting PowerShell help. This is something which would be definitely very useful thing for you as a newbie, or maybe even as an experienced professional. The first thing is which we come across is like looking for help. Say we are looking for anything, we directly go on to Google. We need to buy a furniture, suppose, and we are looking for some examples. Where do we seek the help? So many sites are there, OLX and stuff like that. So similarly, you need to have some help every time. Everybody doesn't know everything. There has to be some repository which helps it out. You can call it as a library to get PowerShell help from. I would also like to declare how to declare a variable, learn to work with collections, learn to work with logical operators, learn to use Boolean values. Oh, I'm sorry, there's a little bit. So I would like to discuss on finding list of certain types, finding list in libraries by just about any property, finding list in libraries by one property continued, finding list using certain content type. So these would be 10. This table of contents is definitely be very much useful for you to learn and view all those commandlets or commands which would be actually being used in the real life scenarios, the backup and recovery commanders. As I'm going and speaking further, you will be definitely understanding and looking forward to what I'm talking right now. What is backup and recovery? So the first thing which might come into your mind would be the backup and recovery of a site collection or a farm. Yes, it's correct. So that's how I'll show you a few commands for addressing all those whatever you might be thinking right now. So business connectivity services commandlets, database services commandlets, farm commandlets, feature commandlets, general commandlets, health monitoring commandlets, import and export, logging in events, performance, security, service application, search commandlets, site collection commandlets, site management commandlets, timer job commandlets, upgrade and migration commandlets, web application commandlets, workflow management commandlets, and last but not the least, the fun part of it, the PowerShell examples. Yes, I would like to discuss a lot of things. So you, by the table of contents itself, you might have got an idea what whole lot of stuff I'm going to cover in this training program. Okay, so I will conclude after that. So yes, the first thing which now comes in to get started with the training program, and here it goes.